I've always measured my days in completed tasks and stock market points, not moments. Yesterday was supposed to be no different. I had a board meeting at 2, a conference call with the Tokyo branch at 4, and a dinner I was already dreading. But the sky decided to fall apart right around 1:30. It wasn't just a drizzle, it was one of those biblical New York downpours that turn streets into rivers in minutes. My driver was stuck 10 blocks away, and I was caught right in the middle of it. I ducked into the first place I saw with a light on, a tiny, steamy coffee shop called The Daily Grind. It smelled of burnt coffee and wet wool, a world away from the sanitized air of my office. I just wanted a black coffee and a dry corner to wait out the storm, annoyed at the unscheduled, inefficient pause in my day. I found a small table in the back and was trying to salvage a report on my phone, pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. The coffee was surprisingly decent, I'll give him that. As I was setting the cup down, the girl from the counter, the barista, walked over. I figured she was going to ask me to leave or buy something else, but she just stood there for a second. "Excuse me, sir?" she said, her voice a little hesitant. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I have to ask about your ring." I glanced down at my hand. My ring. The sterling ring. It's been on my finger since I was 21. A heavy piece of gold with the family crest carved into the black onyx. It's my history. A direct line to my great-great-grandfather. I've never seen another one like it. I told her curtly, it's a family heirloom, hoping that would end the conversation. She didn't back down, which surprised me. Instead, she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. It's not just that it's a family heirloom, it's because my mother has the exact same ring. I've seen it on her dresser every day for my entire life. I almost laughed. The absurdity of it.
This ring was forged for Edward Sterling in 1847. There was only one. My father gave it to me, his father gave it to him, and so on. It was the physical manifestation of our lineage. "That's impossible," I stated, my tone colder this time. "This is a one-of-a-kind piece." She just nodded, as if expecting my reaction. "I know it sounds crazy, but does yours have a tiny, worn-down engraving on the inside of the band? It looks like the letters E and S and a date." My blood ran cold. No one could know that. I never take the ring off. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical explanation. A high-end forgery? A lucky guess? But the look on her face wasn't one of deceit. It was genuine, earnest confusion. She saw the shift in my expression and seized the moment. "My mom's name is Martha. She lives just a few blocks from here. She can tell you. She knows the whole story behind it." I was about to dismiss her, to get up and leave, rain be damned. But the seed of doubt was already planted. My entire identity, the one I'd built on the foundation of being a Sterling, felt like it was resting on that tiny, secret engraving. Before I could process it, the girl, Abigail, she told me her name was, had her phone out. "Please, just talk to her. 2 minutes. It'll make sense." Against every rational instinct in my body, I nodded. She handed me the phone, and I put it to my ear, hearing an older woman's calm, "Hello," on the other end. I introduced myself, my voice stiff and formal. "William Sterling. My apologies for the strange call, but your daughter insisted." I fully expected to expose some kind of scam within minutes. But the woman, Martha, her voice was so calm. It wasn't the voice of a con artist. "Mr. Sterling," she said, with a sigh that felt like it carried 100 years of weight. "Abigail wasn't lying. I do have the ring. It's been in my family for generations. It belonged to my great-grandfather, Charles Sterling. The name hit me like a physical blow. Charles Sterling.
There was no Charles Sterling. I knew my family tree by heart. It was a straight, clean line down from Edward, the patriarch who built our empire. The idea of another Sterling, a whole other branch, was inconceivable. The coffee shop, the rain, the report on my phone, it all melted away into a dull hum. She must have sensed my silence because she continued, her voice steady and clear, painting a picture that shattered the bedrock of my life. Charles was Edward's younger brother, she'd explained. They were given identical rings when their father passed. But they had a falling out, a terrible one. Charles couldn't stand the way Edward conducted business, the choices he was making to build his fortune. He said he refused to build his family's future on a foundation of other people's suffering. The vagueness was almost worse than a direct accusation. She went on to say that Charles walked away from it all in 1852. He moved to California, changed his surname to Miller to erase the connection, and started a new life, completely cut off from the Sterling name and money. The story my family cherished, one of singular vision and strength, was a carefully edited version. We weren't a straight line. We were a fractured one, broken by a secret I never knew existed. I don't remember handing the phone back to Abigail. The next thing I knew, I was just staring at her, and the buzz of the cafe had returned, louder this time. She wasn't just a barista anymore. She was my cousin? My great-great-grandfather's brother's great-granddaughter? The words didn't even make sense in my head. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. There was an earnestness in her eyes, a genuine concern for me, a total stranger who had been rude to her just minutes earlier. In that moment, my 2 o'clock board meeting, the Tokyo call, the entire structure of my day, my life, seemed utterly ridiculous and insignificant.
I felt a profound sense of shame, so deep it was almost paralyzing. The Sterling fortune, my fortune, was built not just on shrewd business, but on human misery. It was a secret buried so deep that generations of my family likely never knew the full extent of it, choosing to believe the sanitized version of history. Martha explained it all without an ounce of malice, just a quiet, profound sadness. She told me Charles didn't just leave, he fled, desperate to build a life where his children wouldn't carry that stain. He became a carpenter in California, a man who worked with his hands, and instilled in his descendants a deep sense of social justice as a direct response to the sins of his brother. Suddenly, the ring on my finger felt impossibly heavy, not with the weight of legacy, but with the weight of this hidden, terrible truth. The storm outside had passed long ago, but the one inside me was just beginning. That shame became my fuel. Martha mentioned that Charles had left a sealed box with a law firm in California, with instructions that it only be opened if a descendant of Edward ever made contact. So we flew out, me, Abigail, and Martha. In a dusty lawyer's office in Sacramento, we uncovered his final testament. It wasn't just a will, it was a roadmap to redemption. He had invested his modest savings wisely, and it had grown into a $15 million fortune. But the money was conditional. It was to be unlocked only upon an official reconciliation between the two families and used to establish a foundation for social justice. But there was more. Tucked within Charles's old letters was a reference to their older, almost forgotten brother Anthony, who had left for Texas in the 1820s, long before the big dispute, disapproving of his family's entire direction. It was another loose thread in a story I thought had been seamless. The search for Anthony's descendants led us to a thriving community outside of Austin, Texas, where we found the third branch of the Sterling family.
They were educators and community organizers, living out the legacy of their progressive ancestor who had founded the region's first free school. Incredibly, Anthony had also left a will with similar conditions, tying part of his own fortune to a future reunion. So we held one. A grand meeting in New York, not of 2, but 3 families, all Sterling by blood, but worlds apart by history. I now run the Sterling Family Foundation, an organization dedicated to the very principles my ancestors were torn apart by. But sometimes, when I sit in my office, I don't think about the logistics or the legacy. I think about the rain, the smell of burnt coffee, and the hesitant voice of a girl asking about my ring. I can't explain it. It was like the universe simply decided to stop and rewrite my life on a random Tuesday afternoon. And I was just a passenger in my own story.